You do it. You do it.
So welcome to Explain by Gravitas. It's a segment of our business where we sit down or stand up and we talk about things that matter to real estate, planning, development, whatever it may be. We're going to lead off. We're talking about a topic that we've dealt with a few owners as of late, and that is whether or not subdividing your land will increase the value you'll see on the other side when you sell. What are your thoughts, Andy?
Well, I think it works. In the event that you actually are in a position to subdivide, and that's probably something worth touching on to start. You might not necessarily, just because you got a big parcel doesn't mean you can cut your land up. You've got to have the right zoning. So anything like a general res or a low density res, or even potentially a township zoning or a neighborhood residential, all have the potential to be subdivided. Now, just because you have the potential to subdivide does not necessarily mean you can actually subdivide. You might have a situation where the council just do not have an appetite for it for whatever reason. Maybe you're in a PSP and they want to see you as opposed to, so what I was sort of talking about just then was if you have a situation where you just want to cut your backyard off, as opposed to doing a whole subdivision where you're cutting it into, let's say for the sake of the conversation, 20 lots, that they might not allow that. They might only allow you to cut it into 20 lots because they don't. I mean, you got to think of the council's position. They want higher rates. So if they can get rates out of 20 lots, I mean, rates are what, $1,500 a year these days, minimum. So, I mean, 1,500 times 20 is far more appealing than 1,500 times 2.
Well, that's why they push the prices too, the rates up as well. Like we're dealing with, we deal with very often. We'll go out and appraise properties and appraise land and tell them what we think you could do. And that seems to be, why can't we subdivide it here? And they have that pushback with council where they just want to keep their existing house and a few sheds and just subdivide the land off. And it just doesn't seem to work that way.
And that comment you just made earlier as well about putting the rates up. So you're totally right. That is a bit of a dirty tactic that councils use to push larger landowners, well, not larger landowners as in fat people, larger landowners as in landowners who own large parcels to subdivide. They take their rates from being $1,500 to, although I don't think they ever go as extreme as charging you for 20 lots. But they might start to charge you for 3 or 4. And it's just a nice way of them bullying you into subdividing. So I guess the impetus for this Zoom really is we actually have a situation where we have 3 landowners at the moment who are in the process of subdividing their parcels of land to realize the most amount of money. So the best place to start, I suppose, is the best way to see the most money, the highest revenue meaning what the site sells for, not necessarily profit and revenue are two different things, but the most revenue comes from whoever subdivides the land up into the smallest parcels possible, because the per square meter rate for land changes based on size. So if you've got a 55 square meter parcel of land, actually, no, let's go off real numbers here. If you're looking at something like something out in somewhere like Pakenham or Officer, you're probably looking at something like between $1,000 and $1,200 per square meter, around that 350 square meter mark. But I mean, if you start to look at those 1,000 square meter blocks in that area, and I know you might be thinking they don't exist, they actually do. North Officer PSP. Now the per square meter rate, North Officer PSP, the northern part of the Officer PSP, should I say, that's the LDRZ stuff, so low density residential stuff. That part of the PSP is 1,000 square meter lots, and the per square meter rate is probably something more like $800 or $900 per square meter.
So realistically, and that's what we thought, it's a great talking point Like I said, we deal with a lot of people who go, look, we don't have any plans or permits. We don't have anything ready from a planning or anything at all. And we always say, if you want to realize more value, take those little steps to get closer. And if you can do that, and you can partner with a very good team around you, and yes, that is going to cost you money, but you'll see more out of it.
Absolutely.
I definitely think, like, we've got a prime example. We've got one. Where is it in Gippsland? I'm thinking of.
We've got two in Gippsland, either Hayfield or Glengarry.
Yes, either one of them. I was actually not going to say the suburbs, but we've said it anyway. It's happened. They literally, more or less, they're both wanting to subdivide just the backyard off. And at the start, they were like, what could we get for it as a whole? And then we broke down and went, well, if you actually sold it as a house and then you sold the backyard off, you're going to realize more value. Yes, it's going to cost you X. And we partnered them with our, well, I guess you'd call him our town planner, or what would you call
town planner?
Town planner. And that he operates and be able to walk them through and hold their hand through that journey. So realistically, and on the other side of that, you look from a sales perspective, they're going to realize how much was it more than what they were. It was about 400K when you're talking, they're going to see probably maybe 1.5 mil out of it versus seeing 1.1 if they just sold it as is right now. So it's a completely different contrast when you look at it like that and you go, what are they going to spend? They're probably going to spend, how much would you say? 40 overall? Max. Yeah, I always like to try and overestimate. I know that the fee proposal came in pretty light, and I know marketing won't be too much. It might be 40K just on planning. But to realize that value,
and we got to spend $5,000 on
pretty substantial when you look at
marketing as well. We got to spend five or six
and you
grand on marketing.
And you pay an agency fee as well. Agency fee. So you got to look at those.
You're going to pay an agency fee either way.
Either way, if you're thinking about selling, but it makes, unless you want to sell your own house or your own development, that's fair enough. But realistically, and we've got another one out in Pakenham, which we actually have had that one on the market since October of last year. We got a record break.
Really interesting case study, isn't it?
Yeah. We got a record breaking price. But we ran that campaign. Unfortunately, the owners pushed it back. They wanted a higher price. We've actually indicated to them that they need to actually spend some money and get it closer to being development ready. They had no plans or permits, nothing. It was just two individual parcels that were 3,800 square meters altogether, so 1,900 each, two homes on them. And that was it. It was literally like, here you go to the market. We've got no planning advice, nothing. And what we've done is we've taken them through the journey. They're going to go and spend money on planning. We've actually realised that
they're going to see an extra and they're going to see an extra $1.2 million.
Yeah,
because they're subdividing it.
Yeah, instead of selling it as one whole property or two individual, they're going to sell it as four, which is more appealing because like
two houses,
and
two vacant blocks at the back.
Yeah, and that definitely helps. Do you think about the reason for development in general? They make bigger parcels of land, they pay a massive lump sum, and then they go, okay, I've got to put the services and everything, and they make them smaller, and they realize more value. It's the closer you get to being development approved or permit ready, you're going to see more out of it realistically. That goes without saying. So that's pretty much. Do you have anything else to add, Andy?
No, that's it. I think, I honestly, it's good because one thing we get with a lot of landowners, it's a funny one being a middleman because you hear, and that's what an agent is. You hear both sides of the story. So you hear what the developer is thinking and you hear what the landowner is thinking. And they sound completely opposite, but what we've learned throughout this process is they're actually saying the same thing. So the developer says, vendors want too much money, and the landowner says, I know what I'm sitting on. Those are what invariably every time they say the same thing. And you might be sitting there going, well, how are they the same thing? They're the exact opposite. They're actually not. The landowner knows exactly what they're sitting on. They have a development site at the back and a beautiful property at the front. They just don't know how to sell it. They have to cut it in half to be able to see that, to be able to realize the full potential of the property. They know what they're sitting on. They just don't know how to access it. And developers are saying landowners want too much for their property. Well, absolutely they do, because of that house at the front. The house is the problem. So get rid of the house, allow the vendor to sell the house as a house to a human being, and sell the backyard as a development site at just standard development rates, like just whatever retail is. Developers happy to buy it. They're buying development land at development rates per meter. They're happy. They're just getting stock in the door. They don't have to worry about a house or anything like that. And the vendor gets to see an amazing price. And it's funny, something happens psychologically when a vendor gets to sell their house as a house to a family. I feel like they're really, really getting a good result. Whereas when you're selling to a developer, they always feel like they're getting screwed. Is just one thing I've subtly picked up on it.
That's bang on. It's, to be honest, we always say it, developers think more like robots because they're plugging in numbers into spreadsheets. When you're buying a house, you do not buy it like that. You probably have to work out your financials, but you're not going, I can realize this much out of this project and I'm going to do that. It's completely different. And I think developers aren't so emotional in their judgment and purchasing versus if you're buying a house, you're going to be far more. It's going to mean
this,
more.
By the way, absolutely. This, by the way, is the reason that we specialize in this sort of stuff, because we say it and it sounds naff when we say it, but it's a different sell. You have to have a different strategy. And I'm not knocking anyone here, but the general real estate agent just doesn't have the understanding of how to advise a purchaser on how to subdivide a block.
100%. I'll put it in perspective as well. When I was 18, I went and worked with my father. He's in real estate. He's sold 2 to 3 lot subdivisions before in his past. And he would only ever target, you got to figure out where your target audience is. And to begin with, they're not on probably realestate.com. It depends on the size and the scale of your property. They're on development ready or real commercial. So they're on a completely different platform that I'd never known about until I went and worked and specialized at the previous company I did. And that's why we went out and did our own thing. And it is a completely different sell. And it's a different strategy as such.
Absolutely.
So I think whenever you're looking at, if you do own land and you are curious about, could I keep the house? Some people just want to get rid of the house and developers will just knock it down. But if you can keep the house, what's the cost involved? What do you have to do? What's the timeline look like? And that's what town planners, any good consultants will be able to advise you. And normally you can get that sort of initial consultation free of charge. We definitely offer that. It's something we're actually about to sit in a Zoom, literally, with the owners from Hayfield and walk through a fee proposal. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know how to end this Zoom. I've never really done this sort of stuff, but
I've got a good way to end it. I've got a proposal for the next topic we talk about, and I want to know what you think of it. What if we talk about it was just on the tip of my mind. I hate that so much.
Well, I had another thing we could and what I was going to say is we'll get Tom from A-Band Consultants to come on. He's our town planner that we prefer and use and go to. We're going to have a collaborative session with him and discuss why we think you need to paint the picture and get it closer to being development ready to see the most out of it. So I think that'll be our next little 100%. Thing that we do.
I had another idea as well.
What was it?
I cannot get it back. I just cannot get it back. It's kind of been
that's all good, guys. That was do you have any questions or anything, Andy? Anything to add?
No, that's it. Thank you so much. Awesome. No, that's it.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.